Welcome to another episode of the Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together later about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. The theme of this season is Back to Business. The past couple of seasons have involved deep dives on horror history, and this time around we're taking it easy with all of that, and instead focusing on talking about what is most interesting to us in each of the movies that we watch. So kick back, relax, and enjoy it with us. All right, man, we're here. Already on episode 2 of season 17, Back to Business, knocking out these horror movies one after another in our favorite month of the year, as we work our way towards Halloween. And this movie felt very appropriate for the time and place that we're in.
It did. Yeah, 100%.
About, I don't know, probably 100 years ago, we reviewed the movie Terrifier. Mm-hmm. And I think we were both really pleasantly surprised by it and liked it a lot. This week, we are reviewing Terrifier 2, which came out in 2022, and I'm kind of surprised it took us this long to watch it. I think last time Terrifier 2 had just started to be advertised when we were talking about Terrifier 1, and then I had fully intended to come back to it and watch it at the time, but didn't for some reason. So,
well, I think we did have that season that was like a whole year, basically.
Yeah, we've had a couple of really long seasons.
Yeah, so like two or three ago. So that, I mean, it lines up with when, like, where we were pretty much just watching like either 90s or something else. But
yeah,
but I mean, when this came up, I was like, I actually forgot we did Terrifier, I think, and then you're like, well, we did it, but 2, and I was like, yep. Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, and now the third one is about to come out. So yeah. Maybe 2 more years we'll cover that one.
One day.
Yeah. But the nice thing about Terrifier 2 is that if you have Amazon Prime, then it's actually free to watch this on Amazon Prime Video. So for once, they found a way not to screw me over somehow.
It's actually kind of surprising. I mean, you still got to watch commercials at the beginning, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, but only at the beginning. I mean, they're sticking ads in the middle of content I straight up bought now.
That's true.
Yeah, this was a better viewing experience. But anyway, we've talked a lot recently, kind of coming off of our season about B horror movies. And then last week we watched the movie Slay, which was a Tubi original. This movie was a Screambox original. And Screambox is another kind of horror themed streaming service, I think kind of maybe like a competitor to Shudder. And so once again, we have what was kind of a highly anticipated horror movie that is coming out, you know, sort of exclusive on whatever level that means these days to the Screambox streaming platform.
Yeah, but I noticed I was going to say, I noticed when searching it in Prime, like you could watch it with Prime, but it also said you could watch it with Prime plus Screambox. And I was like, I already got my other, what is it, Shudder? I already got Shudder. I'm not going to get another one. Just not doing it. That's what I thought when I saw that.
Yeah, it's just like streaming platform fatigue. I mean, there's just too many of them at this point. But anyway, I noticed, though, in the opening credits that there was also a reference to Bloody Disgusting. And I have only known them as a, like, horror website. I mean, they do a lot of, like, reviews and things and write a lot about just horror stuff in general. So I hadn't really seen anything that I had noticed where they had been involved with, like, the movie making before. But I thought that was really cool. Like, this seems like a thing that I would go to that website to read about this movie being made.
I mean, if you think about it, man, like how many like martial artists are brought on for films, like to make sure it's like right, or like doctors for like doctor TV shows, get people who know horror to be at least consultants. I think that would be, that's a brilliant Arkoff move.
That's a really good point, actually. Yeah. Like, I think that probably, you're dead on. That was a great call on their part.
We're open for business. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Horror consulting. But yeah, this one, it was kind of fun to get back and see what was new with Art the Clown. And if you'll recall, you gave the movie last week, I think, a 4.5 out of 5 on the gnarly rating.
Yeah. 4 out of 5 fake boobies. Yeah.
Yeah, we might have to bump the scale up for this one.
My rating changes.
Wow.
Yeah.
This was the goriest thing I've seen in a long time. And the practical effects I thought were just amazing, but also bone chilling. Like they did not pull punches and did not look away at any point.
It's like basically they took all the energy from all the mainstream horror movies over the years that like had to cut away from like the blood and gore that's happening. They like took all that energy so that they could make ratings to other films. They took all that energy and were just like, no, we're showing that plus.
Yeah, this was like all the scenes that would have gotten cut out of any other slasher that's come out in the last 10 years. Yeah,
100%. Without a doubt. And I'm here for it.
Yeah, and this one, so I was really curious what the follow-up would be like, because the first one I thought was just a very straightforward slasher that was still creative and good, but I mean, it was through and through slasher. So it's like, well, what do you do next? Is it just more slashing? But I thought it was interesting because it felt like this one kind of got a little bit, I'm not even sure how to describe it, like a little more surreal. So kind of like Nightmare on Elm Street. You know how that movie, like, okay, cool, we've made all these slashers, we've got a new slasher franchise, how's it going to be different? Well, this guy attacks you in your sleep and you sort of lose touch on like what's real versus what's a dream, and then like if you die in one, you're dead in both. And what is this guy even? Because he seems like some kind of supernatural force and everything. This one I feel like kind of leaned into that a little bit, which I thought was an interesting way of expanding on the original idea and not just making it a copy paste of the previous movie.
Yeah, and I think budget obviously has a hand in that too, because the first one, it seemed like it was mostly just centered down like a random street and a random like mechanics building or something like that, whatever that factory was. With this one, it was like, oh, let's see what they can do with more money, with more time. And I didn't expect it to be a very long movie, and it was.
It was a very long movie.
I was very surprised about that, but worked out. I don't know how to explain it. Like I'm not complaining about it. I just did not expect that to be the case just based off the first one. And I think like early on when I was like, oh, they're like explaining some history here, I was like, okay, this is going to be a minute before it's over with.
Yeah, and this one definitely had a much larger budget than the first one. Like, it's still low budget compared to a typical Hollywood movie, but it is, I think it was like 5 times or more than that times the budget of the original. And so they definitely had a lot more money to work with, and that pretty much all, I think, went into practical effects and just making more. Like everything was just more. It was more deaths, more blood, more scenes, more characters. And I have to think that a lot of what was in this was set up for Terrifier 3. Because otherwise there was a whole lot of story in this one that went absolutely nowhere and was a complete waste of film.
Right. Yeah.
So like, when this one was over, I was ready for it to be over because it felt like a really long movie, and it was long compared to the first one. But I also felt very unsatisfied by the story because it felt like it created all these sort of like openings that it never came back to.
It was, I think it was confusing for me. It was almost like I was not paying attention during this, which I've been known to do, but I specifically sat there and watched no phone the whole time, and I was still kind of confused, like at certain parts, and I was like, wait, I don't understand what the dad had to do with it. Like, I still don't think I technically do, and then why she came back to life. There were just things I just missed, and but I was okay with it, because like you said, by the time I was like, okay, I don't have energy for any more of the story. We know that 3's coming out just because we took 3 years to get to this movie, basically. And so, I was good with it.
Yeah. And the story, and again, maybe this is just all set up for the third one when all these questions are going to get answered and it'll have totally been worth it. But the story in several parts for this one just kind of dragged in a way that made me lose the intensity, because I feel like all of the horror scenes, like all of the scenes where Art was torturing somebody, were really convincing and really intense and really scary. But then there were these like long patches in between where it's like, oh, we're going to a party and I just really need to dance, and oh no, my friend put some Molly in my drink and that's going to have me messed up for just long enough plot wise that I need to be kind of messed up, and then we're going to get somewhere else, and then I'm not going to be messed up anymore, because this is how drugs work in movies. And like, it just, I don't know. There were things about it where I'm like, come on, like, can we just keep this moving? Can we get back on to like the interesting parts? And especially when it didn't pay off at the end, it made me even like more mad about all the time that I felt like was kind of wasted on those in-between scenes.
I think, so a couple of things. One, I think they said Molly, but if it was acid, that lasts 12 hours if it's actual LSD. So that's just facts out there. I learned that from Young Gravy. Now, second, I think that because I think for me, it was like, we know where we're getting at. Like you mentioned with the dancing scenes and things like that. It's like, I know what's going to end this anyways, but you're taking a long time to get there. And let's just get there. Like there was just fluff where I was just like, just because you had extra money, you didn't have to make it fill out that many scenes. I guess I have 4 things. So there was a little bit of fluff there that I was kind of like not annoyed with, but I was just like, it could have easily lost my attention. Like, out of habit, I grabbed my phone because I was like, nothing pertains to the story, but I was like, no, put your phone down, you fool. Pay attention. The third thing was, and I don't know if this is right or wrong to say, but I'm going to say it. I think that a lot of the characters in this film looked a lot alike, meaning like,
yes,
like the girl's friends and the mom. So
we're
much
all the
so
same
that,
age.
We're all the same age. We're all like, they were like, I think graduated high school together. But like, it was almost like watching a black and white silent film, like what we did in the first, like where I lost characters basically. And I couldn't figure that out, because I'm like, wait, why does she look so much? Like, why does she look different? She would just had makeup on or something. I'm like, is that her? And I realized, oh, that was her friend that just got brutally tortured. I don't know. It was just, they look too similar. Let's throw in some difference there. But the thing I thought that was actually also pretty interesting that you mentioned was the Nightmare on Elm Street piece of it, because I had feelings of that while watching this film. I mean, there were dream sequences, obviously, so that's going to happen. But like, I still, like, there were definitely scenes in Nightmare on Elm Street where you're like, is this dream? Is this real life? You're trying to figure out. And it was kind of like that throughout this as well, not knowing if someone was just knocked out or dreaming. And that's why what was happening. But then you realize like real life was way more crazy than what was happening in dreams, which is the difference.
But there was also the weird crossover. So like, she has the dream and there's like the fire and everything's really crazy on the clown cafe commercial or whatever. But then she wakes up and the room's on fire, and like, you know, she didn't do that.
Yeah.
And nobody was in the room to do that. And then there's the part where the brother is at the school and he sees Art and Art's girlfriend, whoever she was, playing with like that dead animal, and then they disappear, but the animal is there, and then he gets in trouble for it. And then you're like, well, like is Art somehow kind of like haunting him, or is he like envisioning all this, but while he's envisioning it, he's actually like doing the crazy stuff? Or like, you know, there was just that psychological aspect of it that I thought was really effective when they were using it towards the beginning of the movie. And so when the in between kind of story development scenes were really leaning into that stuff, I thought that was great. But when it was more of the, I don't know, just like alluding to stuff about her dad, or like these heart-to-heart conversations with her mom and stuff, and like, what are we doing here? Like, where is this going? And it didn't feel like it ever paid off. So then it was just kind of annoying at the end. But,
yeah.
So also like that they were playing House on Haunted Hill on the TV. Yeah, at one point.
Yeah. and Night of the Living Dead on another scene. Yeah, this was like a combo of like the movie Hostel, like with gore,
yes,
and like Nightmare on Elm Street, and like it was just like its own thing. And the one thing I want to actually point out, which I just think is cool, regardless what people think about the film, but it was written, directed, edited, and produced by Damien Leone.
Oh, yeah.
Leone. Like that in itself, like this is like his band, you know, or like this is his creation. He's, you know, it's just cool. I like the fact that like he had his hands in everything doing it. Often you hear about like you come up with a good idea, but you have to sell it because you're short on money or whatever, and then they take it and kind of ruin it. But like he was just like, I'm going to do this myself. Shout out to him for that. But
yeah.
What kind of childhood trauma do you have to like think up this type of gore though?
Yeah. Some of the scenes were just really, really hard to watch.
Which I don't necessarily have too many issues with it. I think when it's like beating a dead horse is when I'm just like, like if I see like a fight on like Reddit or something, like they're hitting a guy after he's knocked out, or like UFC, you're just like, oh, please stop. That's bad. But there's definitely a few scenes like that here, but like the piece of it that was most terrifying, in my opinion, was just the fact of like he was doing this to torture them. There was no like easy way out for his victims, and that I think is so terrible. Just greasy.
Yeah. He wasn't just trying to kill them; he was trying to make them suffer, and he was getting increasingly cruel in the way that he was doing it throughout the movie.
Oh man. Yeah, just like when he takes that knife out and slashes the girl's face, like her eye and stuff. Oh man,
yeah,
sheesh.
Yeah. I'm usually not squeamish about gore in movies, but this one, just and I think a big piece of it is because it was so convincing.
Yeah,
you know, it was like they weren't trying to hide anything. It really didn't look super fake most of the time. Like it was rough.
Well, I mean, like even it's not like unspoken, like an unspoken rule, but like the fact that he was like slicing up the kid in the film too, you know, like that was just like torture in itself. And, you know, it was a scalpel, so it's going to go deep, but like not, depending on where it goes, not life threatening. Man, it was just bad. But what role did the dad have in this? I guess I still don't understand the whole notebook thing.
So I think you got to just stop trying to figure it out, because I don't think there's an answer.
Oh, okay. No, I think you might. I just didn't know if I missed it.
I think we might get an answer in the third one. That's my guess. Okay. I think that a lot of this had to be set up for the big reveal in the upcoming movie.
Okay.
Because like,
which is fine. It was just like, what the heck?
Yeah, and like the girl that was Art's friend.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't really explain that other than that she was a girl who had died. They said that there was probably some connection between them, but they never got into that. That Dad seemed to have this knowledge of previous victims somehow. And there's this whole storyline that's being set up but not delivered on. Yeah. And I have to think that's what the third movie is going to be. So
interesting way of doing it, though.
Yeah. Do you think it's about time to get into some questions?
Let's
Interview
do
questions? All right. You want to go first this week?
You know what? I think I will do it.
Good. What do you got for me?
Never mind. I was going to change it to the one where I'd make you explain the film after you just saying, like, just stop. Yeah. How would you have made this movie better?
Shorter.
Yeah.
I would have done a heavy amount of editing to remove some of the scenes that didn't really help move things along. I think this movie was at its absolute best when it was art being creepy and like attacking someone. And another thing they did a lot was you would see him and know that someone near him was in danger. But then it would go to another scene and you'd think, okay, they're probably fine or they got away or whatever. And then it would come back and you would see him walking off and they would be like dead in the background, or you would see some evidence later of what he had done to them. And I thought that was a really interesting way of like not having to show everything, but continuing to make him more and more scary. And so I feel like the movie was doing a lot of things right, but there were just also scenes that, in my mind, didn't really contribute a whole lot. Like, I really didn't need to spend any time with the two friends that were in the car while she was inside. And like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, Art came and killed them later, but okay, you could have just written all that out. You could have just had her Uber to where her brother was and cut 15 minutes of unconvincing movie time, you know?
No, I'm with you.
So yeah, that's what I would have done, is just removed a lot of the extra scenes that I felt like didn't really contribute to the movie in any good way.
Yeah.
So I get a question for you.
Oh.
What other movies that we've watched would you compare this one to? Or which other movies fans of a movie that we've reviewed would most like this one?
If you were a fan of Terrifier, no, just kidding. Just kidding. So definitely like Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, one that we've kind of talked about a few times, or I've talked about a few times with it. Similar concept with where the Nightmare on Elm Street, I think, is my winner as my answer. Art, albeit doesn't have any speaking, he still does it with his face, where he does goofy things, and like even the goofy tiptoeing so he doesn't get caught when he's sneaking up on someone. Like, he was doing some of the humor that you would get with Freddie. It's just Freddie was obviously way more vocal about it. So I think that would be the same fan base would probably be Nightmare on Elm Street. And then anyone that's afraid of clowns is who I would recommend it to.
Just to further traumatize
them. Fuck them. Yeah.
Yeah. The one that popped into mind for me on this was actually Terror Firmer.
Okay.
Like, I don't really think of this as a horror comedy, but I think for a certain like humor type, some people would find this movie really funny.
Yeah. Well, there were definitely times where he did like have pretty comical stuff. And then times where like that same comical face that he was making was for some reason creepy now. And I can't explain it. It was nuts. What was your favorite scene?
Ooh. So this is terrible. Let me see if I wrote another one down, because I'm not sure I want to say this. So there was the scene where Art answers the door for the trick-or-treaters at the house where he had just murdered the mom and daughter. And then he's using her head with like the brains scooped out as like the candy dish. And then he's like, all the little kids are like excited, and then one tries to take more candy and he's like scolding them for it and stuff. Like, it's this over the top kind of like pantomime funny interaction, like lighthearted, but just when you realize that he's serving children candy from the brains or from the carved out skull of one of his victims.
Yeah.
That was just so dark.
And then limits to one piece.
Yes. Yeah. But then he's like strict about it. You know, that was, I feel like that was like peak Art. Like that was a scene for Art the Clown that just very much summed up exactly what he is. Because like you were saying before, it's not just enough to like kill somebody. He's got to go way over the top with it. And I think that's the type of scene that makes him like a uniquely terrifying slasher villain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So for my last question, what is something interesting you learned about this movie?
So there's one of the gnarly scenes was the bedroom scene where,
oh man,
yeah, getting, you know, scalped and just messed up, bleach and all that. That was actually inspired by Jack the Ripper and what he did to his last victim, Mary Kelly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that was on the commentary, the director commentary for this scene. There were a couple of things that they mentioned, but one of the other things was that Damien like used the time that he had during the pandemic to kind of come up with these scenes, and I kind of interpreted what he was saying as like different killings were inspired by different killers, but this one was for sure inspired by the Jack the Ripper one. He was actually, one of the things he said that he wanted Art to do during that scene was to stop during his torturing of Allie and go into the kitchen to get a drink of water and then come back and continue torturing her. But he didn't do, which thank goodness. But yeah, that was a fact I learned about this. And then you go down the Jack the Ripper rabbit hole and woo-wee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all in all, like, I think you're right. I think this movie definitely set itself up for the third to come out, which is fine. It's fair. There were scenes that definitely dragged. I will definitely watch this again. Like, it'll probably be one of those where like I want to watch 1, 2, and possibly 3 like the same, like within the same day or same weekend or something. Especially
I think
now that we're in fall.
Before watching number 3, I would want to watch this one like immediately before.
You're right.
Because there's no way I'm going to remember all the setup stuff that was in this one, I think.
Yeah. And I think that, it might make it, if they do explain it. Now, if we do it, I would like to come back to this when we do Terrifier 3, if they don't address some of the stuff, then I'm going to lose my shit. Let's be very clear about that.
Yeah.
But I mean, ultimately, I think he was setting up for a third, which yet again is totally cool with me. As long as Art comes back, like I thought it was amazing. One of the things I really enjoy about this, though, is that Art is like a new horror monster. We had the. We talk about Frankenstein and vampires and werewolves and Jason, Michael, zombies. I think Art's going to be in there with them. And I know clowns in itself, but, just like Pennywise is his own thing. Like Art's definitely up there too, creepy all around. And I think that that's really incredible considering how hard it must be because you don't have a ton of, we don't have a ton of universal type horror monsters being created that will last ages, and I think Art will.
I tend to agree, but also I just realized that the movie will have come out before this episode posts.
Shit.
So, Terrifier 3, if people have seen it, maybe someone would be able to give us just a heads up, like spoiler-free heads up.
Ryan,
did they pay us off? Is it worth it? Was all this filler background story that didn't go anywhere worth it?
You could just email us yes or no if you want. Like, if you don't want to send,
that would be perfect. Yeah.
And when we get to it in 6 months,
exactly.
By God, no, I got alerts set back up. We get a lot of emails, junk emails.
Somebody thinks we really need ED pills.
You know what we get a lot of? We get a lot of people saying that they're open for interviews for their movies.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, we should do that sometime.
Nah, it seems fake.
Yeah, probably.
I'll let you be the judge of that.
it's just us chatting with AI for...
Yeah. Hey. Now we have...
Yeah. Yeah, so this one... I think you're totally right in that this has been trying to create like a franchise. I think that it takes way more of a step in that direction with this movie. Mm-hmm. Like, it's adding a lot of lore to the story. One thing I didn't have a good time to talk about that's in my notes that I wanted to call out just here at the very end. The way this movie was made, they were going for like very much like an 80s vibe, which I think was a weird choice because like the opening credits and everything, the way that they were set up, and then even kind of just like the film, kind of a little bit grainy type film quality,
even the movie
and the practical
poster
effect. Yeah. I was thrown off at one point when the girl was talking to her mom and she said something about just Ubering. And I was like, yeah. I thought this was like an 80s thing happening. Yeah. So, and I didn't even know if this was like before or after the original events or something. Like, it really threw me because I liked that. I think that kind of style worked well for the movie, but it was just a little bit disorienting in the beginning, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, no, that makes perfect sense because I feel like it's a vibe now, though, what we're seeing with some of the 80s stuff.
I blame Stranger Things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, without a doubt, Stranger Things, I think, definitely helped. But, this has been around for a minute. People love going back to the 80s when it comes to music and all that. It was, I don't know, it was the last time we were free from all this madness.
For America Online.
You're damn right, Daniel. All they wanted to do was have fun. Then what happened in the 90s? All grunge came in and just fucking ruined it all. Sorry, quote my dad.
Oh, all of a sudden we can't wear spandex anymore.
Oh, no.
Suddenly makeup's not cool.
Yeah. And then the same guys that would talk trash on Slay.
Exactly.
What is happening in our world, Daniel?
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com or hit us up on the IG. That's what the kids call Instagram. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.